for coming. This is a great turnout. I'm a little bit, when we talked about doing this sort of launch meeting, I was like, well, part of this is us, patting ourselves on the back for a job well done, right? So there's that up front, and I'm like, who's going to come to a talk about us patting ourselves on the back? But the truth is that what has been built is extraordinary. The state itself should be extremely proud of the infrastructure that has been developed over the years. But that doesn't happen just by, this little group that's, sitting in North Kingstown and engineers and working on this thing. This happens with many of the people that are on this call. It's really a membership-based organization that grows and organically grows by its membership and the needs of its membership being met. And to that end, we started a project a couple of years back to take us to the next level of infrastructure to help support our membership in their needs and their growing needs, which, those of us, and most of us here are in the technology business, it's crazy. So I'm going to take you through a little agenda here. One, I'll give you an overview of what we did, and then Jacques Laflamme, who's the chair of our board and the CIO of New England Tech, will come on and start the story of why we did what we did. And then we have Representative Deb Ruggiero, who is going to talk to us about what is going on at the state level in terms of trying to establish a broadband office and so forth. And then we're gonna follow up with Erik Brine from the URI Foundation to talk about a brand new project that is being done that is absolutely fascinating, and in my mind crystallizes why we need the kinds of infrastructure that we're building here. And so Erik will sum it up, and I give a lot of thanks to Erik because he's coming in off vacation for us to do this. So I'm going to share some slides now, hopefully. Hold on. Can you all see that?
Not yet.
No, Dave.
No, not yet. So
Hang on a sec. Hang on. Good old Dave with his share function. How about that?
Got it. All good.
You good? Excellent. So we call it the new Beacon. Beacon has been the name of our infrastructure network for a number of years. We had a whole thing about, well, do we call it something new and all that kind of stuff, but we've decided not to. And one of the things about the new Beacon, and I mentioned it just quickly before, is that the speeds and feeds that are necessary to support these rich applications that are being developed throughout our market, in Rhode Island, are extraordinary. I've been in the business for almost 40 years. So for me, this is like, holy smokes, I can't believe we're talking about something like 100 gigabits, right? And so, hang on one second. I thought I'd start with this. Does anyone know what 100 gigabits looks like? We throw around, you see it on paper, 100 gig GB, 100 G, nobody really realizes. That's 11 zeros, right? Bits per second. And you sit there and say, well, I can't believe, that, is that really, that's just overkill. We really don't need that because I just need to get, my email. Well, today, and you'll hear from Erik some of the applications that we're starting to talk about and we're working on. You can have singular applications at a research facility, say at University of Rhode Island. That singular application can work at 10, 20, or 30 gigabits. So we have everything from the very small applications that we need to deal with all the way up to the very large. And when you aggregate these across a backbone in a middle mile, you need extraordinary speed. And so this effort was all about building the next generation speed infrastructure. And it has a lot more to it than just speed, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So very quickly with OSHEAN, we have about 600 plus miles of fiber. There's about 160 anchor institutions throughout Rhode Island that work off the OSHEAN network, all the way from all of the universities, all of the hospital infrastructures in the state, pretty much. Most of the K-12s and libraries are working off OSHEAN's infrastructure for internet access, and some are using other services like firewall services and that kind of thing. We do many of the state agencies. We do probably a dozen different state agencies like Secretary of State's office and the AG's office and that kind of stuff. And now we're expanding even to more nonprofits like Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Family Services of Rhode Island and some of the museums and that kind of thing. OSHEAN works on behalf of any other nonprofit, which can be a state agency or a municipality, can be a museum. We have a lot of what we call above the net services. So we have a lot of things that ride over this network to provide things like cybersecurity services and the like. We can connect everybody to the rest of the world. So if it's something like Apple or Google, we will connect directly to Apple or Google. If we are going to some commodity internet and you need to go anywhere, we can connect to a bulk internet service. So our network also expands on private fiber all the way down to New York City, where we pick up major points of presence in New York City. We go all the way up to New York, up to Boston for Boston. And we have a fabric throughout New York and New England that is private fiber to connect us to these major points of presence. So back in 2011, OSHEAN was selected by the state to be the prime for a thing called BTOP. And it was one of the first infrastructure grants given to expand broadband. And we got $21 million back in the day from the federal government. And we got another 10 million in matching funds to build a $32 million infrastructure for our community anchor institutions. Well, believe it or not, and I tend to, be a little incredulous on this one. It's already been 10 years since we did this network, and with technology, it was time to replace stuff. And so, so there was a big need to replace our packet optical layer. At the bottom layer, we do pure optical fabric, which uses wave division multiplexing. Above that layer is the packet optical layer, and that is the thing that links the big routers to the wave services that are underneath. It's the cream in the Oreo cookie. And originally we had 160 nodes of a product from Cisco called CPT, and we had to go through an evaluation to figure out what to do next for that layer of the network. The critical element of all of this says, okay, I'm going to swap out this entire core section of your network, but you can't have anybody go down because they're using it. And so it became a very interesting technical challenge, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, to build this out, to not only replace 160 of these CPT nodes, but there were other nodes that needed to be replaced with the new technology. And there were new nodes because we had a lot of members asking for new sites to be added, and we had new members coming on board during the same process. So there was a big challenge, and obviously things like project management, having feet on the street who can go out and do all this stuff. And oh, by the way, we had COVID, and yeah, we had sites that there were no people to let us in the door because there were COVID restrictions. So the intricacies of doing this all during the COVID migration, during the COVID deal was extraordinary. But I am very happy to say that we got it done. And it was done with two major things for those of you who are a little bit technical about this stuff. One of the things that we had to figure out how to do was, how could we create a new network next to the existing network? And we used a technique called BiDi optics that allowed us to install all these new optics around the network and then create a second fiber path for all of the traffic. And so you had the old and the new side by side from an optical perspective. And then our engineers, and I will give a shout out to Mr. John Doman, who designed this idea of a bridge node that as this is a big, routing, node that was designed to translate from the old to the new. And that sat in the middle so that, if some institutions, and I could use Johnson Wales, for example, they have so many sites, they couldn't necessarily swap them all over at the same time, that they need half running on the old and half running on the new, and they needed to talk to each other. And John, and I have no idea how, figured out how to do that and design this wonderful bridge node, and it worked magically. So the other thing was that we had all of these nodes to be put out there, and we needed to configure them all. So if people are familiar with the term fat fingers, if you were doing that manually, it would be a very difficult challenge to do all of that. And so we built with our network operations center an automation fabric that would allow us to do this, to completely reduce the potential for errors. And that also was a wonderful add to our practice. So this was a major success. We really had no significant migration breakdowns at all. It is now a rock solid infrastructure. Like for those of you who like Spaceballs, ludicrous speed. It is crazy. All nodes in this network are actually capable of 100 gigabits, which is crazy. It's 235 nodes, all in production. We spent about $5 million, and realized that the federal government, while giving us the original technology monies to put it in, they did not give us the monies to replace the infrastructure, and we were able to do that through our general business practice and amassing the money necessary to do this project. Underneath the covers is a very advanced and next generation routing infrastructure that makes the routing across our network much simpler, much easier to do, and much more robust from the old MPLS days. And so those of you who remember MPLS, which has been the wide area network fabric for the last 25 years, that is gone away in the wide area for OSHEAN. And we are at the forefront of the national move to do this. So that was all pretty cool. And all the old gear has been decommissioned, and the shredding farm had a party. So the why. Why do we do this? The march of technology just never stops, and I'm encouraged to listen to Erik talk about an exact application that just proves. So, in talking about 100 gigabits, we're talking about unbelievable speeds, and and the things like the cybersecurity that need to go over this to make sure that we're secure that stuff never stops. Applications have all become, they've got embedded videos and they've got interactive gaming and they've got all of these things that are happening. Big data, which we hear is taking over in a lot of aspects. The size of medical records increases, with embedded MRIs in your medical records and things like that. It's crazy how big data is taken over. Obviously, online educational resources, no better example is what happened during COVID to put everybody in doing online classes. Government services are going to more online. And even in a state where we don't think, maybe it's not telemedicine for rural applications like you might hear in the outskirts of Oklahoma, this is still a very important fabric for telemedicine long term, and in the state. And university research. Not every university can afford a supercomputer, but they need to be able to connect to one. And so those are the kinds of things that are going on and running our life. So I don't want to take up the whole time, which I'd really like to be able to, but I can't. Let me just hit the. So that is a quick overview of the last year and a half at OSHEAN. I just want to do another shout out to my staff. They just performed above and beyond in very difficult circumstances and pulled off a miraculous, kind of conversion. This was really extraordinary, and I thank them deeply for this. And I have to thank our members for, they call you up and say, hey, we're coming in, we're going to swap these cables, we're going to swap this, and they were all wonderful in helping us with that effort. So I appreciate our membership in helping us get this done. So I would like to turn it over to Jacques Laflamme. Jacques is our chair of our board, and is also the CIO of New England Tech, someone who is certainly using the latest in a lot of these techniques that I just talked about. So Jacques.
Thanks, Dave. I may pat you and your team on the back a little bit more, if you don't mind. First off, kudos, congratulations to the entire OSHEAN team for the successful rollout of the new Beacon network. That said, are there any end users on this call who are really surprised in OSHAN's ability to successfully overhaul their entire network under what seemed like the cover of darkness? Their efforts certainly didn't go unnoticed. It was a Herculean effort put on by a crack team of leaders, architects, engineers, technicians, and finance folks. OSHAN leadership charted a course and formulated a plan. OSHAN architects conceptualized a next-gen network vision and then researched state-of-the-art technology and vendors. OSHAN's engineers and technicians put the details together and executed that plan with no breakdowns, putting 235 nodes into production and retiring all their legacy hardware in just 20 months, as Dave noted, while wearing masks. OSHAN finance folks kept the architects in check and made sure that the user community benefited from this whole effort. The result is a highly available, ludicrous fast, flexible yet simple network, which didn't break the bank. But I'll say again, are we really surprised that this team pulled it off? The new Beacon network isn't just New England Tech's internet pipe. I know this sounds kind of corny, but it represents our future. It certainly is meeting all our present needs heroically, as most of our applications and services have been moved to the cloud, and more will follow. And the pairing that Dave touched on makes this possible. Online teaching and learning is no longer a network challenge for us, as evident to going back to March of 2020. OSHAN's new Beacon network and its ubiquitous pairing with other internet RANs, has offered up us a means to move our telephone system to the cloud effortlessly. The flexibility and the feature-rich design is allowing our esports program to flourish, and they're competing at a national level now. New England Tech is certainly able to sleep well at night, knowing that OSHEAN has our back. OSHEAN continues to provide our user community with the most operationally efficient support. They continue to stay ahead of the curve with their vision and understanding of our community's present and future requirements. And, you know, Dave's always asking us, what's next? What do we need to do? What do we need to prepare for? And having just participated in OSHEAN's annual financial audit review, I can assure everyone on this call that their leadership team and finance folks are meeting our needs. They're being very fiscally responsible. OSHEAN is operationally, strategic, and fiscally on top of their game. As far as I'm concerned, they win the Triple Crown with this effort. Well done, guys.
Jacques, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the kind words. And you have been a supporter for a long time. You've known the Ren community from before you even came to, you know, and not everybody knows the Ren community, but even inside the Ren community, Rhode Island should be assured that OSHEAN is very well respected nationally and does a lot of great stuff. I see George Loftus from Internet 2 is on with us, who used to, you know, be our founder, you know, from back in the day, and now is with Internet 2 at the national level. And George and I talk all the time, and Internet 2 decided to buy the same type of gear that we're using and use the same new routing techniques to build their national backbone most recently. And so we're in lockstep with what's happening at a global level by Internet 2 and the work that George and his crew are doing, which is really cool. I'd like to now switch gears a little bit and bring in Deb Ruggiero, Rep Deb from the Rhode Island House, and Rep Deb is both cognizant of and helping try to prepare us for a new influx of money that is coming from the federal government that quite honestly dwarfs what happened back in the BTOP days. And so Rep Deb has introduced a bill to help us coordinate the uses of these monies at the state level. And so Rep Deb, really thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks everybody for being here this morning. I'm honored to be here. I'm also honored to chair the new House Committee on Innovation, Internet, and Technology. It's only 2 years old, but I think it's really important to continue these conversations in state government. It's a very exciting time. And I think what we're hearing this morning is why a state-of-the-art infrastructure like OSHEAN's fiber network is so critical for an evolving digital marketplace. No doubt our meds and eds and some of our state agencies are so well served by OSHEAN, and thank you, Dave, for that. But I want to pivot and say our small businesses, residents, and many municipalities do not have access. They don't have the on and off ramps to the fiber highway that does run throughout our state. You know, they're still running on coaxial copper cable. Broadband is as important to Rhode Island in the 21st century as electricity was in the 20th century. So from a state government perspective, you should know Rhode Island has been one of only 2 states in the nation without a broadband office, no governance of broadband whatsoever, and no one accessing federal funds for the last 8 years. The other state, Mississippi. But I say this because, you know, a lack of a Rhode Island broadband office or an advisory council has been a real weak spot in Rhode Island's efforts to build that next generation digital infrastructure. You know, we have 14% of Rhode Islanders who are unserved. They have no internet whatsoever, and 42% who are underserved. You know, they're paying a lot for poor upload speeds and unreliable service. So in many ways, the feds have forced Rhode Island into the broadband game. Last November, Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and appropriated $65 billion, right, with a B, for broadband. So every state will see at minimum $100 million. Rhode Island may see close to 200 million. So the question is, why this massive appropriation for broadband infrastructure by the feds? Well, because states have not been getting what they need from the commercial market. The incumbent cable providers have not necessarily stepped up when it comes to the real upload speeds and the affordability and the reliability that everybody needs in a 21st century economy. So the bill I introduced, the legislation here in Rhode Island, House Bill 7083, creates a voluntary broadband advisory council. We have state agencies, businesses, municipal leaders looking at technology trends. We should be looking at best practices that other states who've been doing broadband infrastructure and municipal broadband, they've been doing it for nearly a decade, while Rhode Island has sat on the sidelines. So the council would play a very important advisory role since we don't have a dedicated broadband office. You should know our first day of session in January, the General Assembly appropriated $500,000 from ARPA for Rhode Island Commerce to look at establishing a broadband administrator and begin writing a strategic plan that has to go to US Commerce for our state to even access this money. So the intent of the legislation is to bring our state agencies, OSHEAN, municipal and business leaders together. We tend to work in silos in Rhode Island, with DOT repairing roads and laying fiber, OSHAN doing what OSHAN's doing, FirstNet for our emergency responders. So as a state, we need to coalesce and look at some innovative ways as we move forward with broadband. And if you look at the Fed's requirements for states to even access these hundreds of millions of federal dollars, they're strongly recommending that states help municipalities form partnerships and try to build fiber to the premises for residents and for business. So in other words, let's look at successful municipal networks in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in Connecticut, across the country, that could be part of Rhode Island's future. And for me, public confidence matters, so there must be transparency in how the state invests these millions of dollars that are coming our way in future broadband projects. I would ask, are we deploying fiber in some municipalities to connect that last mile? Are we considering innovative solutions that will serve our citizens for the next 20, 30 years? Or are we going to continue to cement old technologies because, well, that's the way we've always done it for the past decade? So to me, this is about creating a digital next generation infrastructure to take Rhode Island into the future. And this really is a once in a generation opportunity with all of these federal dollars to grow a blue economy, that's going to attract and retain high-tech companies, scientists, researchers, engineers. They're going to need massive upload speeds to do business in Rhode Island, and certainly here in Newport County. So I really think Rhode Island has an opportunity to be a leader in the blue economy, in the green economy, in so many economies. Look at the natural resources from Narragansett Bay to our defense economy, our marine trades industry, manufacturing, but we need the digital next generation infrastructure. I think we needed it yesterday, but the goal is to help build it as soon as we can moving forward. So you have my commitment as an elected state person in government that I'm going to continue to advocate tirelessly. And I certainly look forward to partnering with many of you for a very exciting future. And I would ask that you call your state reps and state senators and tell them to support the broadband bill so we can move Rhode Island forward. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and look forward to the future. Thank you, Dave.
And thank you so much for your support. I'd add on, I want to recognize Jen Leisure, who is the executive director of the Quilt, which is our national organization, and it's a good follow-on to just basically say, we were on a call last week, about strategies relative to the influx of money that is coming to the states, and I can succinctly put it from the consultant that was explaining what is happening relative to the money is you're not playing checkers, you're playing chess.
Mhm.
This is not to be trifled with. It is very complex. It's got lots of complex rules, and it's got lots of requirement on the state to adjudicate on the front end, but then monitor on the back end at an audit level the monies that you're going to give out. And so I really do hope, Rep. Deb's bill, passes. And I kind of actually don't understand why there's even an argument at this point. I mean, I understand why there's an argument, but I don't understand why there's an argument if you realize it from a state level. So I really thank you for your tireless work in trying to help move this ball along at the state.
Thank you.
And so to follow this up, I've been working, myself and Rob Gay at OSHEAN have been working with a coalition of people in the state that are working on a next generation architecture and opportunity. It's another grant. But the interesting thing about this grant is that it's an economic development grant. So it's not just about the technology sector that Erik and I have been working in. It's actually much broader, and it goes all the way to the economy itself. And Rep. Deb talked about it, the blue economy. And so we have been granted a planning grant that we have been feverishly working on. And I'd like to turn it over to Erik Brine from the URI Foundation to talk about our project.
Thanks so much, David. I appreciate you having me here today. It's wonderful to be able to share this venue with Jacques and Rep. Deb. Thank you. Please count this conversation as my support, being a fellow Jamestowner, and you being my great representative, helping push the ball down the field on this one. We really appreciate it. Both the state and the organization that I'm representing, and you can see the engineering building at the University of Rhode Island behind me here, is dependent upon the infrastructure that David, you and your organization, create and maintain for us, and Rep. Ruggiero, the infrastructure that you help fund and make sure it's possible for us. So we really appreciate the support from both of you, because we wouldn't be able to do the thing that I'm about to talk about without that sort of support and effort and bring this economic development opportunity to the university. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can look at something a little bit more interesting than just my face while I'm talking here, and hopefully you guys can see this here shortly. All right, are you able to see the screen now?
Yep.
Great. I'll try to move through this pretty quick because I want to make sure I leave some time for questions for all of you, from me or any of the other guests here today. But what David's referring to when he talks about this large grant opportunity is the Economic Development Administration, a subsidiary, if you will, of the Commerce Department, their Build Back Better Regional Challenge. Rhode Island was one of 529 submissions to this effort this past fall. They selected 60 finalists to move on to a second round, and those 60 finalists received $500,000 planning grant and the opportunity to apply for up to $100 million of federal investment for advancing a specific portion or ecosystem of the economy. And in Rhode Island, we're focusing on the blue economy through the Blue Economy Technology Cluster, one of those projects being the one that I lead, the Smart Bay. What we realized and what we've talked about for a while in Rhode Island is that we are blessed, like was mentioned earlier, not only with a phenomenal geography, but with a real density of partners across the government, industry, and academic sectors in really this tight geography that is focused around 400 miles of coastline, right? We have great legacy investment in a variety of areas. And we know that with just a little bit more investment, we could really change the future of our economy in Rhode Island to be one that's more focused on some of the natural assets and gifts that we have. So this Blue Economy Technology Cluster really has up to 7 different pieces of it. The first project is the Smart Bay that I'm going to spend most of the time talking today, but I'll mention a couple of the others because I think it's important for folks to understand kind of the breadth and scope of this effort that we're undertaking throughout the state. The second is the Blue Tech Innovation Center at the URI campus. This is super important and tied very closely to the Smart Bay platform and very relative in the conversations that I have regularly with David to make sure that we have the bandwidth available to run such a project out of the Bay campus. And it really will be not only the front door to the Smart Bay as we develop it, but a real opportunity to bring industry and even government partners closer to the academic sector and put them on campus where they can not only leverage the great intellect and experience that we have through faculty and students there, but also some of the great technology assets and being right on the bay, accessible to the water, as you'll see, both in a physical sense and in a virtual sense. Other projects include some ocean-based renewable infrastructure, wastewater, and things like that. A couple aquaculture projects, including a smart hatchery, a deep water port in East Providence that's looking to be developed, an offshore wind training center at Quonset, and then really a focused blue economy workforce development pipeline that spans across all of these projects. One of the important parts of this technology cluster and our application to the EDA is that we interweave the relationship between these different projects, and you'll be able to see a little bit of a thread pull through not only with people, but with technology and how it all relates. And that rides on a backbone that is ocean. As I mentioned, we're really blessed with this density of different sectors that make up our economy. And they're all very relative for the Smart Bay. And those include offshore wind renewable. We're the first state in the country, right, to have an offshore wind farm, defense, marine trades, ports and shipping, aquaculture and fisheries, and even tourism and recreation. And we think they all have a real opportunity in the Smart Bay to advance what it is we do in a dramatic fashion. So what is the Smart Bay? One of the things that we understand is that all of these organizations that have grown up for a long time now over the Narragansett Bay have made great investments and for a long time have been collecting data out of the Bay. Now, they don't necessarily do it in partnership in any way, shape, or form. They often do it for their own individual purposes, whether they're research efforts at the university or commercial efforts through a port or government efforts through Department of Environmental Management or Department of Transportation, or even at the federal level, we've got NOAA and EPA that have assets and facilities right on the bay, or the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, right, has a test range in the Narragansett Bay. And all of these things, live relatively harmoniously in the Bay, and they may occasionally bump into each other, but there's not a working relationship between them. How can we pull all those relationships together to develop a world-leading research and development, prototyping, and testing platform that we can leverage for the blue economy? How do we build out a network architecture that actually connects all of these institutions, their legacy assets and sensors and collection capabilities to create and aggregate that data in one massive data lake for the benefit across sectors? Now, this has been done in a variety of places around the world. One of our closest partners on this effort is IBM, and they've undertaken Smart Bay type efforts in a variety of places around the world, like the Port of Rotterdam or the Port of New Orleans or Galway Bay in Ireland, and even closer to home in New York, in Lake George with their Project Jefferson. Now, in all of these efforts, again, they're pretty singularly focused, right? The ports are focused on shipping and transportation and how to do that more effectively and efficiently with data. The effort in New York is really focused on the effects of climate change. Well, here in Rhode Island, we're looking to do something a little bit more aspirational, and we think will really have dramatic impact on the economy. And that is doing this across a number of sectors at the same time. All the ones that I mentioned previously are collecting data in some way, shape, or form. And if we're able to bring all those data sets together and connect them so we have a large, functional, singular, but modular and flexible platform that is the Narragansett Bay, we think that brings in a tremendous variety of new opportunities to the Bay. It will be an unmatched platform that's available to all of those sectors for a lot of cross-cutting and interesting reasons. And I'll get into a couple use cases perhaps in a few minutes. It's one thing though to aggregate all that data, as you know, and how important and how relative, how valuable data is today. It's something entirely different to be able to leverage that data for purposes, right? So not only do we need to be able to build out this network environment for data collection and aggregation, but then we also really need to leverage that data and develop this high fidelity modeling and simulation environment that we're calling the digital twin of the Narragansett Bay. And we really feel like that's going to democratize access to the water in our state in an incredible way. It will lower costs, improve opportunities for research, for prototyping, for testing, the demonstration, and even training, and make it cheaper and faster to get things into the water that are effective across all of those sectors. So the Smart Bay is a big location. So we bring this chart up just so you can kind of see the aspirational vision that we have. It's not just that all those miles of coastline and everything that's up from Providence down to Narragansett and Watch Hill and over to Newport and Little Compton. It's everything even offshore to include that SAMP area that probably folks are familiar with, that goes out past Block Island and kind of gets us out past that inner shelf. Because there's a lot of different types of activities that happen out there, and there are a lot of assets out there that are super relevant for us. Not only do we have fiber, as all of you know, and cables laid all the way out to Block Island and the Block Island wind farm, that wind farm itself can be an asset for a variety of different reasons. So we want to make sure we include that, and also the different opportunities to study and leverage those spaces out in the water. So our intent is, at first, we are currently finalizing our inventory of assets around the state. We're working on the network architecture to pull all those things together. We're developing the right phased approach to layering additional sensing and infrastructure capability across the bay. And then we will look to determine the appropriate data formatting and standardization that's going to be necessary to allow all these organizations to work together and use each other's data in a real meaningful way. Aside from the things that mostly currently exist out there that are static platforms, some of them are terrestrial based, some of them are even on bridges or roads. Many of them are out in the bay even that are static, whether they're maritime buoys, like those owned by CAIM, or others owned by Department of Environmental Management. We also plan to add a whole new level of mobile platforms, which is helpful for a variety of reasons. One, they don't necessarily have to stand up to the effects of the environment. They don't necessarily get run over in the bay or vandalized in any way, shape, or form, which is a problem we have with sensors out there. But they also allow us to move a high density of assets around the different parts of the bay for a large variety of reasons, whether we roll them up next to the port and do a study on diver detection and security around a port, or we move them to an aquaculture, an oyster hatchery farm to really get a deep dive and look at water quality and research around that area to improve it, or we move it all the way offshore and study marine mammals in an area outside of the wind farm. This sort of networked set of mobile assets will provide a tremendous amount of capability and actually serves as a platform unto itself to develop new sensors, new technology, and deliver a new generation of advanced technology workforce to the Rhode Island area. This is a big challenge, and we're breaking it up into a variety of pieces. I've been working closely with a large number of partners, including OSHEAN, but folks from Verizon and IBM and Amazon Web Services, and small businesses around the state like Nautilus Defense or Gyro Robotics, and anywhere in between, to determine our best path forward and how we bring all of this together to bear to put in a really compelling application. Smart Bay is only a part of the Blue Economy Technology Cluster, but it's a big one, and it's one of the most cross-cutting because it allows us to do things like work with the Navy to develop opportunities where they can be safely in the water, testing new applications. perhaps right underneath where an oyster hatchery happens. So there's stuff on the bottom doesn't get drug up by somebody's anchor because it's protected by the hatchery that's above it. And that allows both of those things to happen in the same water column, if you will. It allows us to take data that's incredibly interesting to Department of Environmental Management to watch where there are going to be dangerous algae blooms and notify the Department of Health, and work with tourism and recreation so they can close down beaches, and work with researchers so we get to the point that we're not just reporting on harmful algae blooms, we're able to actually predict them and share that. So all of these cross-cutting efforts really create a tremendous opportunity for us. And we think this can really be the driver of a 21st century economy for us here in Rhode Island. I think I'll probably leave it there because I think I've talked far too long, and I want to make sure I leave time for questions for me and the other panelists there. But I really appreciate you highlighting Smart Bay as a real opportunity to show the power of what OSHEAN is developing, David.
Well, it's and a lot of people have heard the term Internet of Things, right? And what does that mean? And this is an application where you've got sensors, and the number of sensing points can go into the trillions when you put these platforms out there, because individual sensors can do multiple things. And so I think there's well over 1 trillion sensors in Lake George doing this kind of work. And the cool thing about it is, because it becomes this like big data thing, like Erik talked about, the cross-cutting between the different applications and the different people, you're going to get lots and lots of different people that collaborate to make this gold work. And it is an example of what is coming in a lot of facets of our society, and this is one of the examples from a germane economy that we all know well, that we're going to try to advance to the next generation. And I'm really excited about it. And the cool stuff is this combining of university research with the economic fabric of the state, with collaboration with other states. When this stuff gets aggregated, I mentioned earlier, we're going to need to connect to a supercomputing center. Well, that might be at Brown, that might be in Massachusetts, that might be, who knows where that particular computing center, and you're going to need a fabric in order to be able to do that at ludicrous speeds.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, David. I mean, as we've talked about, we expect we're going to be sharing a lot of this data with both of those places. URI is a partner in the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center, so we absolutely plan on leveraging that. And as you've seen on our team are folks from several of the UMass schools, including MIT, Dartmouth, Lowell, Amherst, as well as other organizations in Massachusetts that have been important partners like MITRE, MIT Lincoln Labs, and Woods Hole. The partnership that we signed with MITRE and Woods Hole and Newark is going to be a way that we're able to share secure data from the Smart Bay with all of those important research institutions to really make the Narragansett Bay a key test bed and places where those organizations will continue to operate. And that just brings so much more to our economy that doesn't currently exist.
So I wanted to, in the last few minutes that we have here, open it up to anybody asking a question of any of us. If anybody has anything. This is where everybody goes silent, right? Well, it's been my pleasure to be able to do our launch, if you will, of the new Beacon network. You're going to see a lot of applications like Erik just described. Pay close attention to Rep. Deb's bill, and if you've got a senator that you run into, please tell him to vote for the Senate bill to do the broadband office, because man,
Thank you for all your support, Dave. And I put the bill in the chat if anyone's interested. And thank you so much for today. This was really great. I'm very encouraged by where we're going with our state and where we're going to be in the future.
Well, and I've told you this before, but as you walk around the halls, yeah, the state should be proud of what they have, but they can't rest on their laurels. They need to continue to drive and go to the next generation, because this stuff goes faster than you can imagine.
Right.
Right. So. All right, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.